It happened at the company dinner, a night I thought was meant to celebrate success, teamwork, and the sacrifices I had made to keep my department thriving. The room buzzed with laughter, glasses clinking, the faint sound of jazz drifting through the speakers. I stood tall, proud to have my wife by my side, believing she was my partner, my anchor, the one who would always respect the journey we had walked together. But then, without warning, my boss leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. He pointed directly at her, my wife, the woman I had given everything to, and in a voice that silenced the room he said, "Today she's mine." The table erupted in uneasy chuckles. At first, I thought it was just another one of his tasteless jokes, the kind of humor everyone tolerated because of his position. I waited for her to roll her eyes, maybe laugh it off, or lean closer to me in solidarity. But instead, she looked at him with a glint in her eye, lips curling into a smirk I'd never seen directed at me. And then she said the words that made my stomach drop, "I agree." Chairs scraped the floor as heads turned. My colleagues stared, eyes darting between me, her, and the man who signed my paychecks. My heart thundered in my chest, but my body froze. Betrayal, humiliation, and disbelief crashed over me all at once. But as I stood there in shock, I realized this wasn't the first red flag I ignored. My name doesn't matter as much as the kind of man I've always tried to be. I was raised to believe that love meant loyalty, that marriage was built on sacrifice, and that the measure of a man was how well he provided for his family. When I married her, I thought I had hit the jackpot. She was beautiful, ambitious, and at the beginning, she made me feel like I was the center of her world. She encouraged me, told me she believed in me, and made me feel like all my long hours and sleepless nights were worth something. In those early years, I poured myself into building a life for us. I worked late into the night, picking up extra shifts, climbing the ladder one grueling step at a time. I gave up hobbies I once loved, stopped seeing old friends as often, and focused all my energy on making sure we had stability, comfort, and security. I thought that was what a good husband did. I thought that was what she wanted. And for a while, she played the part of the supportive wife perfectly. She smiled at family gatherings, bragged about how hard I worked, and told anyone who asked that we were a team. But slowly, things started to shift. Her compliments turned into critiques. Instead of being proud of what we had, she began comparing us to others, people with bigger homes, flashier cars, and fancier vacations. She started hinting that I needed to dress better, that I should impress my boss more, that maybe if I networked harder, I'd finally be successful. I brushed it off, thinking she just wanted the best for us. But in reality, it wasn't about us, it was about how she looked to the world. Still, blinded by love, I gave in. Every suggestion, every little push, I told myself it was just her way of motivating me. I couldn't see the truth, that my sacrifices weren't drawing us closer, they were just making her hunger for more. I didn't see it back then, but every little compromise I made was just feeding her appetite for something far worse. At first, the signs were small, almost laughable. She would tease me about my clothes, "Is that really what you're wearing?" Or comment on how I spoke, always with a hint of superiority, as if every word I said was beneath her attention. I laughed it off, trying to convince myself it was harmless, that she didn't mean it in a cruel way. But the digs grew sharper, louder, more deliberate. In front of her friends, she would roll her eyes at my jokes, call me boring, or sigh exaggeratedly as if I were some inconvenient accessory she had to endure. Work functions were the worst. I would show up expecting to enjoy a night out with my wife, only to watch her drift toward my boss like a moth to flame. She would laugh at his jokes, touch his arm casually, and I would stand there, sidelined, invisible in the very moments I wanted her by my side the most. It was humiliating, a slow, gnawing pain that made my chest tighten every time she ignored me with such ease. Then came the gaslighting. Every time I confronted her, trying to make sense of my unease, she would snap, eyes flashing, voice dripping with condescension. "Don't be insecure. He's just my friend. You should be grateful he likes me." Grateful? How could anyone be grateful for being belittled, laughed at, and sidelined in their own marriage? And yet, I tried. I tried to believe her, to swallow the knot of suspicion twisting in my stomach. Suspicious behaviors piled up like stones in my pockets. Late nights at work, hidden texts, phones she suddenly couldn't find, excuses I once accepted. "It's just a project." I should have seen the pattern. The same nights my boss conveniently needed to catch up on files. The same late hours she suddenly couldn't account for. But love blinded me. I rationalized, justified, excused. Even smaller gatherings turned into a theater of humiliation. Friends would ask her something about me, and she would brush me aside, treating me like a burden, a shadow she tolerated rather than a partner she loved. Every snide remark, every dismissive glance, every careless laugh felt like a new cut, each one deepening a wound I refused to acknowledge fully. Anger simmered beneath the surface, yet I remained silent, trying to hold onto a sense of reason, of hope, of love that was clearly one-sided. How much more could I endure before something snapped? How long before the invisible thread holding our marriage together frayed completely? And then came the night when my boss didn't just flirt with my wife, he claimed her as his own. And she agreed. The night of the company dinner replayed in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I had walked in expecting celebration, camaraderie, and perhaps a few light-hearted toasts. What I got instead was a scene that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The room shimmered with soft lighting, glasses raised, servers gliding between tables carrying platters of food. Colleagues laughed and clinked their glasses, sharing stories of the year's triumphs. I stood there, proud of my achievements, my arm around my wife, believing she was still on my side. Then it happened. My boss, a man whose charm always masked arrogance, leaned back in his chair and raised his glass, his eyes glinting with mischief. "I think your wife prefers me," he said, voice smooth, carrying over the laughter and music. "Tonight, she's mine." The word struck me like a blow, and for a moment the room seemed to pause. I scanned the faces around me, searching for a hint that this was a joke, that someone would intervene. Instead, there was silence. A few tentative chuckles rippled through the room, unsure if they were supposed to laugh or stare in disbelief. And then I saw her, my wife, the woman I had trusted, the woman I had built a life for. She didn't blink, didn't hesitate. She met his gaze, smiled, and slowly, deliberately, linked her arm with his. The smirk on her face was unmistakable, a confirmation of everything I had feared. Whispers spread like wildfire. Phones were raised, some cameras already recording. Every eye in the room seemed to turn toward me, as if my humiliation were a spectacle for everyone to savor. My chest tightened, my stomach churned, and the world around me blurred. I wanted to shout, to scream, to rip her away from him and demand answers. But shock rooted me to the spot. Rage bubbled up, raw and hot, clashing with a grief I couldn't even name. How could she do this? How could she betray me so completely, so publicly? I wanted to retreat, to vanish from the room, but I knew I had to confront her. Later, outside, under the dim glow of the streetlights, I faced her. "How could you do this?" My voice trembled, barely concealing the storm inside me. She looked at me with icy clarity. "You'll never be as powerful as him," she said, voice calm and cruel. "I need a man who can give me the life I deserve." Every word was a dagger, each one confirming that the woman I loved had chosen arrogance and greed over loyalty and love. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Not in anger, not in tears, but in quiet, searing fury. I felt the betrayal settle into the deepest parts of me, but alongside it came clarity. This wasn't the end of my story. This was the beginning of my reckoning. She thought she had broken me that night, but what I did next, she never saw coming. After that night, I withdrew. I stopped responding to messages, avoided work social events, and spent long hours alone, replaying every humiliating moment over and over. But no matter how much I tried to disappear, the story spread. Whispers followed me in hallways, murmurs floated through the office, and friends reached out with a mix of shock and sympathy. My parents were furious when they heard the details, demanding I take action immediately. Her parents, on the other hand, offered excuses, brushing off her behavior as harmless fun or blaming me for being too sensitive. Reddit-style comments flooded my mind as if the internet itself were my conscience. "Dude, she humiliated you. Divorce her ASAP," one voice shouted. Another echoed, "That boss is abusing power. Expose them both." I imagined forums alive with outrage, strangers analyzing every detail, every glance, every word. It was validation I hadn't dared to seek in real life, but it stung at the same time. Anger and vindication twisted together. Meanwhile, they flaunted their new relationship with an arrogance that made my blood boil. Photos, stories, casual mentions of dinners and trips. It was all intentional, a public display of their supposed victory. Every post, every boast, was a reminder of how deeply I had been betrayed. People saw them, admired them even, but I knew the truth, and that knowledge became my quiet weapon. I began gathering evidence. Texts she thought she deleted, emails revealing favors and manipulations, records of HR violations that implicated my boss. Each piece was another layer of armor, another tool for the reckoning I was planning. Social outrage built around me quietly, Those who knew the story understood who had been wronged. Friends whispered support, colleagues offered careful sympathy, and strangers in online threads clutched their keyboards in moral fury. The world seemed to be watching, whether they knew it or not. Every smug smile she wore, every confident laugh my boss shared, fed the fire that was silently growing inside me. I was biding my time, shaping my moves with precision. They thought they had one, but I had been planning my move all along. I waited until the timing was perfect. Every text, every hidden message, every HR violation was cataloged, irrefutable evidence of misconduct. When I finally approached HR, it wasn't with anger or begging. It was with clarity, facts laid out like a blueprint of betrayal. My boss, whose arrogance had once made him untouchable, was confronted with proof he could not deny. Within days, he was fired for harassment and abuse of power. The company buzzed with whispers, and suddenly the tables had turned. As for my wife, the truth spread faster than I ever imagined. Friends who had once envied her charm recoiled at the reality of her manipulation and betrayal. Invitations disappeared, alliances fractured, and the social standing she had so carefully curated crumbled. It wasn't instantaneous revenge, but it was the kind that lingered, the kind that left her facing the consequences of her own choices. The divorce was finalized quietly, with dignity preserved on my side. I walked away not broken, not bitter, but liberated. I regained my self-respect and realized something crucial. Loyalty is a treasure, not a tool for someone else's ambition. To give it to the wrong person is to hand them the power to destroy you. In the weeks that followed, relief replaced the constant knot of anxiety and betrayal. Peace settled in, subtle but profound, like sunlight warming a cold room. I could finally breathe, knowing I had honored myself, my values, and the life I wanted to build without manipulation or deceit. Boundaries, I understood, are more than rules, they are shields for the soul. Betrayal isn't a lesson in love, it's a harsh teacher demanding you never settle for less than respect. I had learned that lesson the hard way, but I emerged stronger, wiser, and unshakable. And that's how the woman who once called herself my wife became the greatest lesson of my life.